What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Good evening. Good evening. So happy to see you all on this beautiful Tuesday. I know it's a little bit past 6:30, and please bear with me as I continue to take down technology and make this all make sense. But today we have a very interesting session, and today we are going to be talking about Proverbs. Now, Proverbs 21, that is. And so I think um, there's a lot of insightful information. I don't imagine that it's, going to take too long to get through this. But if, like always, our plan is to go at least until, 7:30, no later than 7:30 or sooner. So first, we're going to start off by, let me see here. We're going to start off by saying hello to everybody out there. Hello, hello. And good evening to everybody. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and pull up our ESV. This is Proverbs 21. All right, so we're going to go ahead and read through this. To start, today is the 21st of November, and so that is the reason why we are reading Proverbs 21 today. So we'll go through a new course of action, and that is we are going to read through it all first, and then we'll come back and read the study notes. And then after that, I'll pretty much point out some things that stand out to me, how I apply them in my life, that may or may not allow you or inspire you to apply it in your life. So here we go.
The king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked, are sin. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. The getting of treasures by a lying tongue is a fleeting vapor and a snare of death. The violence of the wicked will sweep them away, because they refuse to do what is just. The way of the guilty is crooked, but the conduct of the pure is upright. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife.
Oh, that's a good one.
The soul of the wicked desires evil. His neighbor finds no mercy in his eyes. When a scoffer is punished, the simple becomes wise. When a wise man is instructed, he gains knowledge. The righteous one observes the house of the wicked. He throws the wicked down to ruin. Whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered. A gift in secret averts anger, and a concealed bribe strong wrath. When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers. One who wanders from the way of good sense will rest in the assembly of the dead. Whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. The wicked is a ransom for the righteous, and the traitor for the upright. It is better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman. Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. Whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. A wise man scales the city of the mighty and brings down the stronghold in which they trust. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Scoffer is the name of the arrogant, haughty man who acts with arrogant pride. The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. All day long he craves and craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when he brings it with evil intent? A false witness will perish, but the word of a man who hears will endure. A wicked man puts on a bold face, but the upright gives thought to his ways. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. The horse is made ready for the day of battle, but the victory belongs to the Lord. A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches.
All right. So this is all really profound stuff. And so we're just gonna, kind of go through this, and then for the verses that I find or I felt that are pretty impactful, we're gonna go over everything from the study. But then I'm also gonna again talk about how I feel like these things apply in my life and how I apply them in my life. And the beautiful thing about reading the Bible is I know like my mother-in-law, she's read the Bible for many of her adult years, if not her whole life. And you can read the book so many times over and over and over again, and there's so many new things that God opens your eyes to. And that's a beautiful thing. For you to read the same book, you pretty much can almost feel like you can anticipate the next sentence. But then boom, your eyes get open to something that may apply to you in your evolution. Year one may be different in year 10. And I think that's pretty much like everlasting life, in my opinion. And so enjoy as you go on this journey and begin tackling this wonderful word. So so for let me see here. So for the study Bible, let me see here. So 21, so 21 through 24. So the king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord. He turns it wherever he will. Every way of a man is right in his own eyes, but the Lord weighs the heart. To do righteousness and justice is more acceptable to the Lord than sacrifice. Haughty eyes and a proud heart, the lamp of the wicked are sin. Now, these four verses are broken down to say, like Proverbs 20:22 through 25, this section has three proverbs. This section has three proverbs on divine judgment, followed by a fourth proverb that is related but does not explicitly mention the Lord. God is a much higher judge than a king whom he controls. On the king in Proverbs, see also Proverbs 16:10 through 15, 28, 28, and Proverbs 24:21 through 22, Proverbs 29:14. The Solomonic origin of these passages shows that the king is specifically Davidic king. People are not vindicated by their own conscience, but by God's judgment, which cannot be averted simply with sacrifices and religious rites. The thing most likely to bring divine judgment on one's head is pride. So don't be too prideful. Now, this is going to tie into another verse that I actually highlighted that I want to talk about, but we'll just continue here. So that's 21 through 4. That's like the general gist of what he's talking about. But now we're going to break down 21:1. So when he talks about the king's heart is a stream of water in the hand of the Lord, he turns it wherever he will. In the study Bible, it breaks it down as the stream of water describes water flowing through a channel or an irrigation ditch, which a skillful farmer can turn to flow wherever he wishes. And then going back to like what this proverb, at least Proverb 21, 1 through 4, verses 1 through 4 is talking about, is that although a king may have power, there's only one real true king, and it's the king that controls the king, right? And it controls all of us. And I think that's an important lesson behind not idolizing people, but you supporting them, obviously unconditionally supporting them with love and care, but then understanding the difference between idolizing and showing love and care to somebody. I think that's an important interpretation, and then at least that's how I would look at it, from my perspective. And so what I would say here is as we move forward, verses 21:9 through 19. Let me see here. So, and this is actually one that I wrote down. So the, see here, 9 through 19, right? Yeah. So verses 9 through 19 on the quarrelsome wife. Frame this unit on the rewards for the wise and the troubles of the wicked. Um, verse 20, so verse 9, right? 21:9. The wise husband will reflect on what aspects of his behavior have led to his wife to become quarrelsome. Now, I think that's something definitely that's something definitely that needs to be noted. I think oftentimes in relationships, at least I can speak from experience. Um, you know, it's easy, and what I've seen, right? It's easy for you to look at somebody else and point and say, "Hey, I don't think that this person did right by me, or I don't think that this person is acting right, right?" But it's not often that we take the time to actually explore internally and say, "Hey, what is it that I'm doing, right? What is it that I'm doing that could potentially cause this person to act or respond this way?" And I think that kind of goes back to last Tuesday's discussion when we were talking about taking responsibility for your actions and noticing when things are changing around you. I think these are important elements to consider. And so I like how at least the study part of this Bible talks about how, a man should never live with a quarrelsome wife. But at the same time, a man has to ask himself the question, are you the one agitating your wife to be quarrelsome? And I think that's a powerful thing. Verse 5, I'm just going to back up here just a second. The plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance, but everyone who is hasty comes only to poverty. Now, there was no study version about this, but for me, how I would apply this to my life is the plans of the diligent. So, one big thing, especially like if you're somebody who's trying to figure out where you want to go in life and where you want to be, one easy way for you to discover this is by creating a plan. And I use this strategy when I'm trying to redirect or pivot to try to figure out where I want to be and where I want to go in life, or what my next step is going to be. And that involves usually building a plan. And so I feel like this verse speaks to me in the way of saying, the plans of the delight lead surely to abundance. And so when we plan and when we fail to plan, obviously where are we going? But when we plan with God's help, right, and with God's support, we will surely be to abundance, right? But if we rush, and this is actually a lesson that I'm going to tie in maybe sometime down the road, outside of learning a lot and maybe failing a lot. If you fail to plan, right, and you want to move really really fast, for me the way I receive this is it'll only lead to poverty. And one way that I would say this could be applicable in my life, right, is if you move too fast, oftentimes, and my dad would tell me this all the time, humble yourself and you shall be exalted. If you don't know what exalted means, I didn't know what exalted means until I hit my 30s. And it didn't dawn on me, right, to go look up what the word exalted means. And it pretty much means to be risen up, right, by God, right? You get promoted essentially is how I look at it. And so my point here is that when you move really really fast and you try to achieve and you try to do too much at once, what ends up happening is you stop you start losing the ability to manage. And if you start losing the ability to manage the things that you have, right, things can get out of control. Although we don't actually control things, right, but you might find yourself being maybe a little bit more irritated than usual, which causes you to overlook something when you're reviewing maybe an email or paperwork or whatever it may be. And so this verse, the plans of the diligent lead surely to abundance. And I feel like understanding that we're operating on God's time, right? And as much as we want to control it and we want it to be for us right away, we're all moving on God's time. And when we understand that, we start to kind of go with the flow a little bit more and we surrender to Him. And I think that's an important lesson that I've learned, probably in the last 3 years. easily. And so don't rush, take it easy on yourself, and just know that if you have a plan, right, and you have the framework of this plan, as you work toward achieving your goals, as you work toward achieving your plans for you, for your family, whoever it may be, um, or you're helping somebody else, right? You having a plan is going to help you determine and understand what's meant for you, right, and what's not meant for you. And it's going to be very clearly laid out because you have something to compare it to, right? This doesn't align with my plan, right? So this opportunity is fantastic, but it doesn't align with my plan and where I'm headed, right? Or mine and my wife's plan, right? Or my and my partner's plan, however, it's framed for you. So that's a really I really like that verse a lot, because planning is fundamentally one of the best ways to reduce stress, reduce pressure, and have some motivation and a reason, establish a new reason why you're going where you're going. And it could be a small plan, doesn't have to be a big plan, right? And then gradually, if you're not performing right to meet that plan, or you're not on deadline, then you can start tweaking little things, to help accelerate you down the way. Now, let me see here. So we're gonna get back to the book. So we have 21:10 through 13. The soul of the wicked desires evil. His neighbor finds no mercy in his eyes. When a scoffer is punished, the simple becomes wise. When a wise man is instructed, he gains knowledge. The righteous one observes the house of the wicked. He throws the wicked down to ruin. Whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered. That's very intimidating. I mean, could you imagine, putting a call out and then not getting answered from God? Imagine all those times where you've experienced miracles, things that you cannot explain. Um, and when you call out, you got them answered. Could you imagine not getting those prayers answered? I couldn't. So it just again goes back to like just showing like the importance of knowing God, I think, and being of the Lord. And then not turning your shoulder. So when you're doing really well and you're accelerating in life, right? I believe it's all about giving back. Like, how can you provide value? How can you be an asset? And even if it says, whoever closes his ear to the cry of the poor will himself call out and not be answered. And there's a lot of other things I'm sure people can think about with regard to that verse. But I didn't go too deep into it in terms of how it applied to my life. So we'll push forward. But before we do that, just as the wicked offers no mercy to his neighbor, so his own pleas for help will not be answered, because God both knows and judges the wicked. Though it may be an example of the wicked being punished for the simple to learn, those who are wise take instruction to heart. And for me, again, I didn't go too deep into this one, but I received this in a way where it says we're by no means supposed to be perfect, right, as humans, because we're humans, right, and we're of the flesh. And so we're not going to be perfect, but if we are working to become God-like, right, in His image, and we love our neighbors, right, and we, welcome, people who want to interact and want to be involved, all people, no matter the walks of life, right? That God will judge us, right? But if you're just simply just being evil, right, and that's described as pretty much not following God, right, in the ways or living your life in the image of God, then God will be the judge of that. And when you cry, those prayers won't be answered. Now, that's an interesting point, but we're just gonna, like I said, we're just gonna keep pushing along here. So 21:14. Okay. So a gift in secret averts anger, and a concealed bribe strong wrath. So that was actually broken down into just one study note here. A bribe achieves its temporary ending of avoiding punishment at the expense of true justice. In the broader context of Proverbs 21:10 through 18, it is clear that a bribe may appease the immediate situation. No one can evade justice forever. So, at one point or another, obviously, there's it's going to be met. And for me, right now, what comes up is you get back what you put out. So if you put in out bad energy and you're putting out, condemnation against people, and if there's somebody you don't like, or whatever the situation may be, if you put it out, it'll come back. And I think uh, that's what came up for me as I was reading that. But please, I encourage you to let that resonate with you in the way that it does. And you can always refer back to this proverb at a later time to get more clarity on it. So Proverbs 21:15-18. When justice is done, it is a joy to the righteous, but terror to evildoers. One who wanders from the way of good sense will rest in the assembly of the dead. Whoever loves pleasure will be a poor man. He who loves wine and oil will not be rich. The wicked is a ransom for the righteous, and the traitor for the upright. Now, this is broken down. When justice is practiced, it is a joy for those who have walked in its ways, and a terror to those who have perverted them. Verses 16-18 describe the reality of the terror for the wicked. They have turned from the path that leads to life, loved mere pleasure and luxury to their own impoverishment, and are themselves a ransom, an image that likely reflects the merciless manner in which they treated others. So I think for me, this is saying pretty much that, um, you get back what you put in, and although the right now might be very pleasurable, it's important to stay away, right, stay away from pleasures that don't edify God, right, and be mindful of the way that you're moving. And for people who turn away from that, and for me anyway, in my mind, right, for people who turn away from that, who choose not to live, a honest and just life, right, who choose not to treat people and pretty much go against, the word of God, um, they themselves, excuse me, those who love mere pleasure and luxury to their own impoverishment and are themselves a ransom, an image that likely reflects the merciless manner in which they treated others. And so for me, I just take that as, hey, it's, if you're going to like nice things, that's not a problem, but don't treat people like crap. And don't treat people badly or poorly. Continue to try to live in the word of God, and, you continue your journey. Now in this, what I would say is there's no such thing. Um, Everything is in moderation, right? And I think that's an important part. 21:17, it says the proverb does not imply that pleasure or wine or oil are wrong in themselves, but when they are enjoyed apart from thanksgiving to God or enjoyed more than following in God's paths, they will destroy a person's life. And I think moderation is everything, right? You have to be mindful about how much of anything that you consume, right? There was a story about a lady, I think in Florida, who might have passed away because she drank like 4 bottles of water back to back to back because she was so thirsty and ended up drowning herself, right? So my point is um, too much of something is not a good thing. And I think when it comes to like the pleasure, I'm reading there's a video about um, um, retention, and it's for men, obviously, but I'm trying to find the words to say without personalizing or without. What I would say is control your pleasures, right? As humans, we have nature. There's things that are pulling us, right? And some people have addictions. Some people have things that they feel like they can't live without. Control your pleasures. How are you to find that to be? And there will be an overwhelming amount of peace. And that's what I've realized, right? Whether it be eating, gummy bears, or whether it be eating, food that isn't the most healthy for me. When I control my pleasures and I do things in moderation, a large amount of clarity came over me, and I was able to absorb, actually, for me, more more information. Like no different than when I stopped eating meat. When I stopped eating meat, I noticed my body changed. My body changed incredibly, actually. I wasn't as swollen. I felt really light. I felt really healthy, and I was really healthy, and I am really healthy. But when I stopped eating meat, they say there's a saying that says pretty much your body is not generating or working as hard to digest that food, and so you get a lot of the you get a lot of the focus in your brain, right? You can use more brain power essentially, right? Because your body isn't working as hard to process this food that's in your stomach. And so I only eat once or maybe twice a day in a snack, and that's been very enriching for me. But that's me controlling my pleasures because I love food. But as I say, okay, hey, God, please continue to guide me as I control, my pleasures, right? The pleasures of the flesh that are calling me to participate or partake, right? Same thing with drinking. Um, you know, just like this is recommending, right? It's not saying that the Proverbs is not implying that pleasure or wine or oil are wrong in themselves. But when they are enjoyed apart from the thanksgiving to God or enjoyed more than following God's paths, they will destroy a person's life. Like it says that right here. This is free game. And it's very powerful. And so I think it's a challenge, right? For me, it's a challenge to say, hey, how much, how, how, how much can you do without this? You drink coffee every morning? Don't drink coffee and see how you feel. Does your energy change? Does your mood change? Test yourself. Have fun with this because God's there. He's with you, right? And I'm not saying drinking coffee is, bad pleasure, right? It's just my point is for me, when I've seen accelerated levels of growth, is by controlling that pleasure or controlling my urges, right? To want to do things that I know don't align with, being the most healthy in my mind, right? Or being the most healthy in terms of living, living as God did. And so it's just an inspiration. But that one for me was obviously that was pretty moving this week when I read it this time around. Okay, so we're gonna go to 21:19. And this was actually really cool because I can kind of see the study coming together here. Because as I was reading, I was like, oh, 21:9 and 21:19, both of these verses look like they actually go hand in hand. And then sure enough, as I read the study Bible, it says, let me see here. I'll show you 21:9. It is better to live in a corner of the housetop than in a house shared with a quarrelsome wife. And then came down here to 19. It says, it is better to live in a desert land than with a quarrelsome and fretful woman, right? So I was like, oh, those two verses go together. So I highlighted them and I made a connection. And then when I came to the study Bible, it says, the life of a desert outcast is better than the life of marriage to a quarrelsome woman. And then it says reference, see note, verse 9. So I go back to verse 9. It says, the wise husband will reflect on what aspects of his behavior have led his wife to be quarrelsome. And then it cites a number of other scriptures, right? And verses. So, so when I'm reading this, right, I believe that our houses are supposed to be spiritual recharging centers. Okay. Now, this is my belief. And so that's my plan. That's our goal, right? And as a union, my wife and I, we work to say, okay, how do we make sure that we keep our house a spiritual recharging center? Now, it's not something that we have to talk about every day, right? But one easy way or some easy ways to hold each other accountable um, are having conversations, right? So agreeing that we're not going to go for days and days and days not talking to each other if we have a misalignment of energy, beliefs, ideas, whatever it may be, right? Address how we talk to each other. Um, but talking it out, as soon as we recognize that there's a change, in the energy dynamic of our household, right? The music that we play, I feel like that brings a tremendous amount of peace, right? And that's, maybe lo-fi music or, meditation music is something that I play pretty much every morning. And it just helps me spiritually get in tune for what I'm getting ready to get exposed to in the world, right? And so it's like, what can you do in your household to create a spiritual recharging center? If you and your partner are significant, are going head to head, what is it, men? if your wife is being quarrelsome, right, according to what we're reading here, what can you do to help lighten the energy in the space? How can you be better? And that's an accountability thing. Women, if you are in your space and your husband is, acting energetically misaligned or unaligned with you, what are you doing to put him in that space, right? And these are questions I feel like we should be asking ourselves. And it's not a matter of, oh, it's just too hard. Oh, I just don't want to do it, right? And this is David talking now. It's not a matter of, oh, it's just too hard, or I just don't want to do it. It's like when things get hard, that's when you're supposed to come together and try to figure out a way to make it work. And I feel that's with anything. So if you're not with a significant other and you're all alone, right? These conversations you have to ask to yourself, well, I didn't get that job, but what am I doing, right, to come off as not qualified in their eyes, right? Is it my study? Is it the way I presented my resume? What is it? Is there something that's not aligning? And I've found that when you live a life of of truthfulness, of having moral standard, of having decency, right? Oftentimes, because you have some type of fabric or blueprint of who you are, which we can get into with like vision boards and stuff like that. That's why I think those are so powerful and profound. But my point here is that when you have a rubric, right, a plan for who you are as a person, right? When things now, and I'm talking about for those of us who may not be married or may not be in serious relationships or not in a relationship at all, right? You have to ask yourself the question, how am I, or how can I, right, um, be better in the way that I'm showing up, right? And oftentimes, if you stop, and if we stop, right, this applies to all of us. If we stop and we actually take time to see how people respond to us, or to see the reality that we're experiencing, which is sometimes hard to do when we're moving and grooving, we're working, we're making, we're paying for our bills, we have these responsibilities, we have those. But if you just take 10 to 15 minutes, whether it be really early in the morning or later in the evening, to just stop and reflect and say, well, how did my day go? I think we'll see a world of change. So yeah, I put all of that out of there. But my point here is that don't be consumed by your pleasures, and it's okay to indulge. So don't be too hard on yourselves, because we are human. But at the same time, challenge yourself. You'd be surprised at what how you grow and how your life improves, actually. So verses 21:20 through 22:1. So this is quite a few here. So I'm going to read through this. Okay. 21:20. Or excuse me. Yeah, 21:20. Precious treasure and oil are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. So that just says everything that we just talked about. Whoever pursues righteousness and kindness will find life, righteousness, and honor. A wise man scales the city of the mighty and brings down the stronghold in which they trust. Whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keeps himself out of trouble. Scoffer is the name of the arrogant, haughty man who acts with arrogant pride. The desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hands refuse to labor. All day long he craves and craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when he brings it with evil intent? A false witness will perish, but the word of a man who hears will endure. A wicked man puts on a bold face, but the upright gives thought to his ways. No wisdom, no understanding, no counsel can avail against the Lord. Now, going back to the study, this unit is held together by inclusio. So there's several proverbs that it pulls book. They call it literally is inclusio is a bookend, is what they consider it here, consisting of 3 verses at Proverbs 21:20 through 22, and 3 verses at Proverbs 21:30 to 22. Or excuse me, Proverbs 30 to 22. In 21:20, wealth is achieved by wisdom and lost by the folly, or the foolish, right? The foolish. But Proverbs 21:21 speaks of pursuing righteousness and kindness. Proverbs 22:1 teaches that one should choose a good name, emblematic of being a righteous and kind person. In other words, um, choose to associate yourself with kindness and goodness um, over wealth. No, there you go. Thus, Proverbs 22:1 answers 21. Proverbs 21:20 through 21. Wisdom can enable a person to achieve prosperity, but one should always pursue a good name through righteousness and kindness over riches, which speaks of the importance of wisdom in a military action. Besieging a city is answered by Proverbs 21:30 through 31, which assert that no wisdom can avail against the Lord, and that however carefully one may plan a military action, victory is in the hands of the Lord. The whole unit teaches that success comes by wisdom, but that no amount of intelligence can stand against the Lord's sovereign will, and that in the end, a good and kind heart is better than great wealth and power. Now that's very inspiring, because what do people usually say? The good guy always finishes last. We always happen to get the short end of the stick. Pause. Let's take ourselves out of the victimhood mentality. This is very inspiring, but it all makes sense. I don't have the 10 Commandments all like memorized by any stretch, right? But one thing that I remembered is if somebody slaps you on the cheek, turn to them the other. And that's that's pretty nice. Like that's pretty nice. And then I think in the study is like, whoa, but don't be defend yourself if it ever came to that, more or less, right? But the whole idea, the whole purpose here, and why I get so excited is because I feel like this stuff takes work, and it's transitions, right? For me, it's like you have people who you feel like would be willing to start a project with you, let's say, for example, and then when it comes down to it, they end up starting a project with somebody else, right? Like that type of feeling inside your heart. Oh, you might have a feeling of betrayal, or you might have a feeling of, oh, maybe they were being fake, or whatever it may be, right? But to say, no, I'm going to leave space, and then next time you see these these people again, these friends, family members, whoever it may be, and you show up with kindness and you show up with goodness, right? That's everything I think that this is saying, right? And I'm going to read it one more time, because I think these obviously are not wasted words, and it means so much. The whole unit teaches that success comes by wisdom, but that no amount of intelligence can stand against the Lord's sovereign will, and that in the end, a good and kind heart is better than great wealth and power. And I think leading with love and leading with heart are really big ways to hold yourself accountable in this. So let me see here. So verses Proverbs 21:23 through 24 says, whoever keeps his mouth and his tongue keep himself out of trouble. The man who keeps his mouth and his tongue is the opposite of the scoffer. Proverbs 21:25 through 26 says, the desire of the sluggard kills him, for his hand refused to labor. All day long he craves and craves, but the righteous gives and does not hold back. Laziness leads to constant greed and craving, whereas diligence of the righteous allows them to be generous. I don't think I said anything about that, so we'll push forward. So then Proverbs 21:27, verse 27, the sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination. How much more when he brings it with evil intent? The sacrifice of the wicked that God abhors is a kind of lie, a false pretense, or piety. We continue on. 21:28. A false witness will perish, but the word of a man who hears will endure. The contrast of a false witness with one who hears indicates that a person who testifies falsely, or pretty much lies on somebody, has chosen not to listen carefully to either the matter at hand, or the requirements that a witness act just, or a requirement that a witness act justly. Both the person and the perjury of such witness will ultimately perish. But it is the Lord who clearly sees and judges these things, and causes the word of the faithful witness to endure. That's empowering. And I'll end with that note, because I like that one. I like that verse, and I wrote something about it. So I will come back to that. Verse 20, or excuse me, verse 29. This is cool for all the tough guys out here. It's kind of how this is how I felt when I met my wife's father. He's very stern, but my dad is not stern. He was very tough. But my dad is very tough. So when I met him, I could kind of see, like he's probably a really, really nice guy. But you have a man who's interested in dating your daughter. You know how that thing goes. But this is cool. And by no means am I relating him to this verse. But when I read this, I said, "Oh well," or neither of my dad either, for the record. But when I read this, I was like a bold face, like like as men sometimes we try to have a bold face. But anyways, nonetheless, let's get back to this. So a wicked man, see, that's why I said it's not applied here, but you understand what I mean. A wicked man puts on a bold face, but the upright gives thought to his ways. So a bold face is a futile attempt to cover up or compensate for a path that is wicked, but the upright does not need to cover up because he is wise in attending honestly to his ways. And this is what I was talking about earlier. If you show up with love, like real love, there's going to be times when you get hurt, for sure. I can tell you that. At least perceivably, you get hurt. But more times than not, these are lessons. And there's going to be times when you show up with good, and it's going to be very, very difficult potentially, right? I'm speaking from my experience. It's been very, very difficult, at times to show up good, right, and to show up happy and with love. But at the end of the day, I think the more that you brainwash yourself, and that's what I say when it comes to, like, you want to learn something. So the more eager you are to want to learn the word of God, in my mind, right, and start reprogramming your brain in the way that you think, in the way that we've been kind of trained to think, through social media, through our lifestyle, through the way we were raised, or whatever it may be, right? The philosophies and things that have even gotten you to this point. And you might be at a point in your life where you're like, nah, I'm good. But even being like, nah, I'm good, in the event there's ever any turmoil, I'm telling you, being the closer and the more versed we are in this book and in these words, and living like Christ in this fleshly reality, the more peace you're going to have. And as you are good today, right, the more you can spread abundance, and the more you can spread love to people around you, to help them in their situation and be an asset to them, right, through love and kindness. And I think that's important to also remember. And then finally, um, 21 through 22 1, excuse me, 21:30 through 22:1. Actually, I think that's it. So the last two verses that I'm going to take us back to that resonated with me was verse 20, as we approach our final minutes here. So precious treasure and oil um, are in a wise man's dwelling, but a foolish man devours it. What did I say about that? And then what did they say about it? Okay. So here, and I know we went over this already, and it comes back down to this one part. The whole unit teaches, and this is pretty much the takeaway for me from this verse. The whole unit teaches that success comes by wisdom, but that no amount of intelligence can stand against the Lord's sovereign will, and that in the good, and in that in the end, a good and kind heart is better than a great wealth than power. What this means to me is, oftentimes, especially when I hear people online, and I might even be guilty of this from a time, but I always give my respects and my praises due to God, right? But for the person who says I'm self-made, um, for me, what I've come in to learn is we have the power to make decisions. And at the end of the day, like, a king is a king, but God is the king of that king. So I think realizing that we are stewards of this life, right? And with the blessings that God bestows upon us, that we're stewards to help facilitate and to help execute his will in all capacities, right? So when we're interacting with people at the grocery store, when we're interacting with, our family members, when we're interacting with customers, when we're interacting with clients, friends, family, I think it's a really important thing to know that it's not you. It's not you, and it may hurt. And I came to this realization, right? How can you study so hard and know all this stuff and be an expert, right? But at the end of the day, like, God gives you the ability and the capacity to absorb this information at this level. And I feel we always have to recognize that. And if we stay focused on that it's because of God, because of God, this, I believe if we focus on that, then what we start to do is, I think we start shedding away layers of ego and pride, right? And self righteousness, right? And when we start doing that, right, then this goes right into the last verse. Then we start hearing people differently, right? You start hearing yourself differently. You start actually leaving room for a conversation to happen. And I think this is very important. Verse 28, it's going to take us out of here. A false witness will perish, but the words of a man who hears will endure. To the study, it says, the contrast of a false witness with one who hears indicates that a person who testifies falsely has chosen not to listen carefully to either the matter at hand or the requirement to even be a witness, right? That a witness acts justly. Take time to listen to each other. I believe healthy communication is taking time to listen. I've been called and I've been shown ways that I can listen to people who are close to me in a better way, um, and a multi-lens way, right? And I want to learn. And I think, especially in today's day and age, um, with technology, where it feels like there's a lot of division, where it feels like there's a lot of I'm right and you're wrong. One of the most peaceful breakthroughs I had when I was in college was we can agree to disagree. And that means you may have your perspective, and that's totally fine. I'm actually willing to hear it because there's probably something that I can gain from it in terms of a learning experience, so on and so forth. I have my opinions and the way I feel about things, and hopefully I can share them with you, and that you'll listen and have an ear to receive what I'm actually saying to you, and then we can have a constructive discourse, dialogue, conversation, or even argument, right? From a standpoint of we're not shouting, right? It's a mature thing. It's a mature progression, and I think that if we get to that point where we can have honest conversations with each other, then there's never going to be a dull moment. And conversations that are uncomfortable aren't fun to have, but the breakthroughs and the matter of intentionality behind them. I don't like the way that you're treating me, and then celebrating people. I love the way you did that, and actually telling people, hey, I think you did this in amazing fashion, right? And giving them great positive feedback, right? In addition to constructive feedback, and then us being receptible enough to say, hey, um, you know, I'm trying to shed these layers of pride. I'm trying to shed these layers. I'm actively shedding these layers of pride. I'm actively shedding these layers of self righteousness. And I am giving praise to God. So as you give me this feedback, I'm not going to take it personal. I'm going to listen. I'm going to digest. And I'm going to see how I can make myself a better person, a better asset to myself, to people around me, and most importantly, to God. So hopefully, with that, I appreciate everybody who joined the live today and got a piece of this lovely wisdom. And I hope that we continue the journey together. If you have any questions, always feel free to drop me a DM. Love and light, you guys. I'll see you next Tuesday for the next proverb. Thanks, guys. See ya.